As we're reading To Kill a Mockingbird, we're going to focus on symbolism. As you guys probably figured out already, this is not about birds. This is about people. But the reason why we have a mockingbird is because of symbolism. So as you're reading these two chapters this week, look for things that are standing in for something else. So symbolisms are meaning beyond the obvious, a visual symbol or picture used to stand for an idea. So it's not actually the object, it's about the meaning or the idea behind it. Okay? A symbol is an image which suggests or represents something other than itself. In other words, when you see something tangible to represent something intangible, so something that we can see, touch, feel, and it represents something that you cannot see, touch, feel, like thematic ideas, feelings. So we see symbols every day. We see like the symbol of, we have this like triangle with the arrows right here. That is a symbol for renew, reuse, and recycle, which makes us think of, taking care of the earth and recycling, right? So yes, that's what it means, but it also stands in for something else. Okay. In literature, symbolism creates direct, meaningful link between an object, a scene or a character, and abstract ideas. So it takes something, an object, a piece, and talks about more abstract ideas. So they have this example about Jacob Marley from A Christmas Carol. Think about his chain. So this is the one with the ghost, the Christmas ghost carol. In the beginning, we have Jacob Marley, and he's wearing like big chains, and he tells Scrooge, "Your chains are stronger and bigger and heavier than mine." So what does that represent? Well, for that case, it represents the hardship and the suffering that Scrooge is going to be going through in his afterlife because of these chains. So that's kind of what we're talking about. It's an object or a scene or a character, but it means something else. It has a deeper meaning. So in other words, when you use something tangible, concrete to represent something intangible or abstract. So what's tangible and intangible? Simple. Tangible is things you can touch, like a flag, leaves, eagles, peace sign, wedding band, water, flowers, dove. They're things you can touch. They're tangible. Intangible are things you cannot touch. These are the abstract ideas like respect, affection, wishes, romance, disdain, meaning, happiness, angst, running ego. See, you can't touch things like that. You can't touch romance. You can't touch happiness. But you can touch like a flower. You can touch some sort of flag, things like that, okay? So we're going to look at some common symbols. So we have a river. So let's say you're reading a passage and they start talking about a river. Do they mean just a river? No. A river can represent the flow of life. Or if it's a deep, dark river, maybe it's the unknown, looking into that dark, deep water. Or maybe the water itself may be clear and pristine. That would be purity. Or maybe there could be danger underneath. Maybe it's dark, deep waters that you don't know what's underneath. Other symbols. A tunnel. Maybe your characters are walking into a tunnel. Or it changes from day to night. Maybe moving from good to evil or something bad is coming. Also in a story, maybe there's a storm. And if you notice that this one shows up a lot, especially on movies, anytime something bad or sad is going to happen, it starts raining. So a storm could be a critical moment. Maybe it represents an intense motion or some sort of trouble. And dawn. Maybe dawn shows up the new day, the start of new conflict. So symbols and meanings and colors also work in the same idea. So we have several colors like red. So think about the color red. When we see red in life, what does it mean? Maybe it means danger. Maybe it means caution. Maybe it means romance. What about the color white? Well, color white usually means purity, clean, light. What about green? Green could be envy. It can also be fresh and spring-like. What about blue? Maybe water or even sadness. And black. Black could be like dark and mysterious. So even just the colors can be symbols. And those are the things we're really going to look for as we continue reading this novel. You're going to look for how Harper Lee uses symbols to really understand what Scout is feeling. So in your folder, you'll also see a link to history.com Jim Crow laws. We need to review the Jim Crow laws very quickly just because this is the time period that To Kill a Mockingbird is set in. And a lot of what's happening around Scout centers on these laws and this racial tension that is in this small community. So I'm not going to spend too much time on this. I'm just going to kind of briefly go over it with you because I do want you guys to read it on your own. So the Jim Crow laws were a collection of state and local statutes that legalize racial segregation. So these are the signs where you would see black only or white only, where they only allowed certain people to use certain things based on their color of their skin. Okay, they existed about 100 years, guys. When the 13th Amendment was ratified and abolished slavery, it really did start this idea of, well, what can we do legally to distance African Americans or people of color from Anglo Americans? That was the thought. So they started making these sort of what they called black codes, which were the roots of the Jim Crow laws, as a way to pretty much make somebody seem lesser or to oppress them or separate these African Americans or even Mexican Americans as well. So they appeared in the South. They were considered legal, and as long as they would say that as long as it was equal, separate but equal, they were seen as okay. But that wasn't always the case. So it's important to keep these in mind that these did exist. Back in the 1800s, these laws were really as important or as strong as they were in big cities in the South. So most African Americans moved to the big cities, so that was where they found more freedom. But of course, like everything, it did spread. So a little things like public parks and even restaurants were banned to African Americans. So keep it in mind, it did exist, and this is something that we are going to be looking as we're going through the story. So I talked about symbolism, so make sure you're looking for those little subtle symbols as you're reading through this about what Harper Lee felt about these laws as she was writing this novel. And try to understand the characters too. What do the characters believe? Where do they sit when it comes to Jim Crow laws? Now, keep in mind, this story is very controversial. It has been banned in many schools in some states across the country. It, but it's important. It's important for us to talk about these ideas. So I hope you guys will enjoy it. Make sure you guys read those 2 chapters, and we'll discuss it further, looking for symbols in our discussion on Wednesday or Thursday, depending what you have me.